He must be removed before the council meets.
The Emperor suspects nothing.
Picture this. It's 1986. The Cold War is at its peak, and the entire world is a massive chessboard for superpowers. In this age of secrets and shadows, the biggest secret of all is the atom. And deep in the Negev desert, one of the world's most sensitive nuclear secrets lay buried, hidden under layers of sand and decades of silence. So what's the price for something like that? What does it cost one person to tell a truth their own government has spent decades hiding? I mean, is it the act of a traitor? Someone who's putting their own country in danger? Or is it the act of a hero, a whistleblower doing what they think is right for the world? Well, in 1986, one man, a technician named Mordechai Vanunu, was about to find out. His decision set off an incredible chain of events. We're talking investigative journalism, high-stakes international espionage, a classic honey trap, and even a kidnapping on the high seas. It was a choice that would cost him pretty much everything. Now, to really get Vanunu's story, you first have to understand the secret he exposed. This wasn't just any secret. It was a national policy of deliberate, strategic silence, one that had shaped the entire balance of power in the Middle East for decades. It was a policy called nuclear ambiguity, or amut in Hebrew. And honestly, it was a brilliant bit of diplomacy and deterrence. Think of it like this. It allowed Israel to have the ultimate weapon as a last resort security guarantee, but without officially declaring it. That way, they could avoid sparking a regional arms race or getting hit with international sanctions. It was all about letting your enemies guess what you have in the basement, hoping that the fear of the unknown would be enough to keep them in check. And, this whole policy wasn't just made up overnight. It was built, piece by piece, over decades. It all started back in the 1950s, when construction on the Dimona nuclear facility began in total secrecy, with a lot of help from France. By 1967, right on the brink of the Six-Day War, they had their first crude devices ready to go, a real doomsday weapon. But the real turning point came in 1969. In a secret agreement between President Nixon and Prime Minister Golda Meir, a deal was made. Israel would keep its arsenal secret and, crucially, never test it. In return, the US would just look the other way. And for almost 20 years, that pact held. The world had its suspicions, sure, but nobody had any real proof of what was happening at Dimona. But here's the thing about secrets of this size. They rely on the absolute loyalty of every single person involved. And inside the Dimona facility, one of those people was starting to have some serious doubts. So who was this guy, Mordechai Vanunu? Well, he wasn't some simple hero or villain. The man was complicated. He had served his country in the military and worked for 9 years as a loyal technician at the very heart of this secret program. But over time, he changed. He started to see the weapons he was helping build not as a source of safety, but as a major threat. He got involved in left-wing politics, and his new beliefs put him on a direct collision course with the state he worked for. And this is where everything changes. In an absolutely shocking breach of security, Vanunu did the unthinkable. He smuggled a camera into one of the most secure places on the planet and took about 60 photos of the facility's inner workings. We're talking pictures of the underground complex, models of weapon parts, the machinery used to make plutonium. He didn't just walk out with secrets in his head, he walked out with cold, hard proof. So with these 2 rolls of film and a mission, Vanunu leaves Israel. He ends up in London, ready to blow the whistle. But as he was getting ready to tell the world, Israel's intelligence agency, the Mossad, was already hunting for him. And this chart right here, this shows you just how massive his reveal was. Before Vanunu, the best intelligence estimates guessed that Israel might have maybe 10 to 20 simple bombs. Vanunu's photos and information, verified by nuclear experts for the Sunday Times of London, showed something else entirely. He revealed a sophisticated program with 100 to 200 warheads, including advanced thermonuclear weapons. He completely rewrote the world's understanding of Israel's power overnight. So while the Sunday Times was getting its bombshell story ready, the Mossad was already hot on Vanunu's trail. The Israeli government knew he was talking. Their mission was clear: capture him and bring him back for trial. The catch? They had to do it without causing a huge diplomatic mess with the UK. They needed to get him out of the country quietly. But Mossad wasn't just going to send in a tactical team. No. Their plan was way more subtle and, well, personal. They put together a deep psychological profile of Vanunu and found what they believed was his biggest weakness. He was isolated, he was lonely, and he really wanted a connection. This clinical assessment became the blueprint for one of the most infamous honey trap operations ever. So you've got these two trains barreling down the tracks towards each other. In London, Vanunu's story is about to hit the front pages and shock the world. And in the shadows, Mossad's trap is being set with chilling precision. Enter Cindy. Her real name was Cheryl Bentoff, an American-born Mossad agent. She staged a chance encounter with Vanunu in London's Leicester Square, pretending to be a tourist. They hit it off. The journalist working with Vanunu, Peter Hounham, was suspicious. He flat out warned Vanunu that she could be an agent. But Vanunu, totally charmed, just brushed it off.
And then came the invitation, the perfect bait. Cindy told Vanunu her sister had an apartment in Rome and invited him for a romantic weekend getaway. For Vanunu, it must have seemed like a dream come true, a chance to escape and start a new life. He accepted. The trap was about to spring shut.
So, on September 30th, 1986, they flew from London to Rome. She took him by taxi to an apartment. He thought he was walking into a romantic evening, the beginning of something new. In reality, he was walking into a meticulously planned ambush. The moment he stepped through that door, it was over. There was no struggle, no escape. Waiting inside, 3 Mossad operatives. His search for a connection had led him right into their hands. He was immediately injected with a paralyzing drug, put on a stretcher, and taken to a van. From there, he was driven to the coast, put on a speedboat, and then transferred to an Israeli naval ship that was disguised as a merchant vessel. For 7 days, as the ship sailed back to Israel, he was chained to a bed. And while he was out there, alone on the ocean, his story finally broke, making headlines all over the world. Once he was back on Israeli soil, the game was over. Vanunu wasn't a whistleblower anymore. He was a prisoner. And the state he had betrayed was ready to make him pay a price that would be measured in decades of isolation and control. His trial was held entirely in secret, no press, no public. In 1988, he was convicted of treason and espionage and sentenced to 18 years in prison. And the punishment was incredibly harsh. Get this, for more than 11 of those years, he was kept in total solitary confinement in a tiny cell. In 2004, after serving every single day of his sentence, Vanunu walked out of prison. But was he free? Not even close. The government immediately slapped him with a long list of restrictions that basically created a prison without walls. He can't leave Israel. He's not allowed to speak to any foreigners without permission. His phone and internet are monitored. And these rules have been renewed year after year ever since. So, as you can imagine, his legacy is fiercely debated. To many people around the world and groups like Amnesty International, he's a prisoner of conscience, a hero who gave up his freedom for the sake of global security. But to the Israeli government and a large part of its public, he's a traitor, plain and simple, someone who endangered the nation. In his own country, he's basically a pariah, living under constant watch by the very state he challenged. Decades later, the questions his actions raised are more relevant than ever. In our world of state secrets and mass surveillance, where does a person's loyalty really lie? With their country or with their own conscience? The price Vanunu paid is crystal clear. But the final verdict on his legacy? Well, that's still being written.